Thought I'd start this one with some deadpan quote reading because we are the hipster fucking uh, triumvirate. I know there's four of us. Quartet. There we go. Nailed it. So this is a fun little learning quote for you. Quote: Either we subordinate the petty bourgeoisie to our control and accounting, in brackets, we can do this if we organize the poor, that is, the majority of the population, or semi proletarians, around the politically conscious proletarian vanguard. Talking about the Lumpen-Proletariat there, close bracket. Um, or they will overthrow, speaking of the petty bourgeoisie again, or they will overthrow our workers' power as surely and as inevitably as the revolution was overthrown by the Napoleons and Cavaignacs, God, fucking French names, man. Cavaignacs, who sprang from this very soil of petty proprietorship. End quote. Lenin slapping the petty bourgeoisie right on their fucking sore cheeks. This is a stream in solidarity with Tigray and the struggle that they have found themselves bereft with right now as they face the unrelenting force of genocide. We must understand the forces that actuate genocide and where these things operate from, the class interests that drive genocide, and the decades that actually well, more so centuries that but we don't have all of the information on that to hand, but we can go into the decades, but there's centuries really of history to cover when it comes to the Tigray, Ethiopia, Eritrea relationship and Eritrea and Tigray's victimhood under the genocide of Ethiopia on many, many occasions throughout history. I am no smarty pants when it comes to Ethiopia. I get history confused. I'll get the other week I got facts confused between the dictatorship the Soviets backed, the genocide they caused, and the current genocide that's going on now. Like I say, there's a lot of history to this stuff, and so um, Gengaros is gonna be laying in information while I'll be conjecturing and every now and then to figure things out and ask some key questions to help bring as much light as we can. Anyone from Tigray or Eritrea or Ethiopia that wants to show solidarity to the struggle and wants to come on, you should pop up in the chat. I'll send this. Well, there's a Discord link on my YouTube channel anyway, but I'll send it in the chat as well if you pop up, and we'll bring you in and you can speak light to the struggle as to what we don't know. We are just a bunch of fucking Europeans. Like our opinions. Well, actually, one of us here is part native. We're basically just a bunch of Europeans. It's getting hard to be reductive now. I've fucking penned myself in. But for the most
I'm
part,
better.
we're mostly there seems to be a 50-50 split. There is a European mix. We got a bit of native and a bit of Asian. Are we hitting those? What's the quota stuff they go on about? Fucking
Inclusion.
I don't. There we go. Diversity quota. Fucking I need the
Yeah.
Jordan B. Peterson voice for it. Fucking where's Kermit when you fucking need him? But uh, our perspective is limited. None of us come from Tigray. None of us come from Ethiopia or Eritrea or any of the surrounding regions. So our perspective is limited. I you know, I can't just go about asking any man them who's from anything, in sort of a rude and condescending fashion. We need to we need to show our solidarity piece, and we can hopefully bring people coming. But that's the process. That's the proposition I lay forward. Um,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
and the problem also is that this is not getting covered by mainstream media at all. Everybody's probably just like, if you're new to this, they're probably looking at this and saying, uh, Tigray, Ethiopia, there's a war going on. What?
most Americans probably don't know Tigray exists,
Right.
but
Yeah.
it's a very important process that we show our piece of solidarity, and then we can hopefully through our showing of solidarity attract people to come in and speak their piece from their struggles. There's a lot of problems with European communists who seem to think that, like, and this sort of comes in a bit with my joke earlier, um, that they seem to think that you need to go and fish out the nearest person that's close enough to that struggle that's that fine, or the nearest person that you can just fish out who's going to tell you this, that, and the other. We got to show our pieces of solidarity, and those people will come to us. We can't go and jump in the face of people, especially people going for a struggle that we don't have any experience in. It's disgusting of us. We gotta do action and engagement. And for that action and engagement, the observation of our actions will bring in people that we can then have the solidarity come from the horse's mouth. From the point of direct experience itself. But how can they trust to ever come on any of these places in the first place if we ain't first doing our part to show uh, the necessary solidarity in the first place, that's gonna show that we care about this struggle, that it is important to us, as is the Palestinian, the Yemenis, the Somalian, and many other struggles of people that are under attack at the moment due to northern imperialists dominating their region, whether it be China, the UK, the US, Russia, any of them. BRICS, NATO, I don't give a fuck what, World Bank, IMF, all the same. Uh,
Mm. And also China. But
China's
China is
in
not part.
BRICS.
Yeah, that's true. Argentina was almost in BRICS at one point. Funny thing. Keyword almost.
An attempt was made.
I did hear about Argentina talking about BRICS, but I could be wrong. I think it's like BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, I think India,
Yeah,
then
India,
China and South
China,
Africa.
and South Africa. Yep.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is
Alright.
where I find that I think Britain might be hoping to have a backdoor into BRICS.
Maybe.
Right.
100%.
Yeah,
Maybe.
like South Africa is
Uh,
still a part of the British Commonwealth. One of the many failings of Nelson Mandela. Um, so like, if they go and get more heavily involved in China, well, Britain can stay in an Anglosphere with the US and still profit off of the imperial gains of China. It's a two-way street for them. Like, there's some dodgy games that the British are playing, and I don't think the Americans really know how much the British might be fucking with them, or they're working together. Either one, it's kind of scary. Uh,
yeah.
Is they're in this
Right.
weird British Commonwealth Plus thing at the moment, where like the Anglosphere has gotten together. They've made up again after 300 years of saying no you to each other more aggressively.
Yeah. No.
Return back to the homeland.
But
But
yeah, no, what's it? Uh, Take it off from where you want to start it off.
Alrighty. I guess I'll start off with like a little bit of information about Ethiopia and Eritrea, and so Ethiopia and Eritrea, these countries are not nations per se, in the sense that they are not ethnic groups. There is no uh, ethnic Ethiopian or ethnic Eritrean. These are uh, uh, see, the terminology starts getting weird. So they would be like, they always say like nationalities or whatever, but then it doesn't really meet up with like the traditional colloquial term of nation. So so when you're thinking of these countries, you need to realize that they are of various different ethnic groups, and um, oftentimes a lot of these ethnic groups are divided up by the borders, um, due to various reasons. Some of it because of European colonialism, some of it because of Ethiopian expansionism, and um, so, like, for example, there is a lot of Somali people in both Ethiopia and Somalia, and they are divided up um, due to how the borders were drawn, per se. And the same thing can be said for the people of the region that we would call Tigray. Um,
Right.
the people of the Tigrayans, as they are called, have a long, proud history ruling over Ethiopia, which goes back centuries. Um, they inhabit um, most of the a significant portion of them live in the region of Tigray in Ethiopia. However, they also make up a large portion of Eritrea's population as well. So this is when it starts getting a little bit complicated, like all things, because the current um, president, I believe, of Eritrea is uh, a Tigrayan himself, from the aristocracy, uh, former landed aristocracy, but he was eventually he's a self-hating Tigrayan. So even though he's Tigrayan himself, he's openly uh, supporting the genocide in Tigray ongoing. Um, so that's where this complication
Let's take
really starts.
Franco. Franco came from a massively oppressed group. He was part. I think he was part Celtic, but I might be wrong.
He
Right.
was from that region that I always mispronounce, Galatia.
Galatia. Yeah,
Yeah,
Galatia.
Galatia, which is a Celtic region.
Yeah,
Galatia is, I think, how it's pronounced in Spanish. Galatia is the Anglo pronunciation because it's a C. It'd be like how it's pronounced. Like how Italian.
yeah. Uh, so, um, okay, so history. Yes. So just a brief history, I guess we can go over of the region of Tigray. So in 1889, when the new emperor Menelik II, probably butchering that name, of Soa, marginalized the Tigrayan peoples, who had been the former ruling peoples of Ethiopia. So Ethiopia's interesting history. If you look at where the center of power for Ethiopia has been, it's been historically moving down the country as time goes on. So it starts off in Tigray, and then it moves to the Amari people, Amaratic peoples. I'm sorry for the butchering of the names. I'm really not good with names here, and some of these names are just hard for me to pronounce. As an Angloid, the Angloid Dipora. So it moved down to them, and now the center of power has been moving down even further to the people of the Oromo peoples, who, interestingly enough, make up the largest population of Ethiopia, and they're mostly located in the south. People also don't really seem to know that most of Ethiopia that we know of today, it did not become, it was not part of Ethiopia for centuries up until the mid to late 1800s during various war campaigns by Ethiopia, which was incorporated into the Ethiopian state. I guess the best way to look at Ethiopia is to look at it as an empire that never collapsed, and it crystallized into a nation. So we can look at it kind of similar to places like Russia. Russia was historically always an empire. It was never this country per se. Empire means
Right.
Well, Rus means conquering people. It comes from the Kievan Rus, which was a Swedish Viking conquering tribe.
yeah, yeah. These countries were never really countries. They were political units of several territories and different peoples, which is what the definition of empires are. But then they eventually just became quote unquote nations themselves, and so Ethiopia's been an
Well, they
empire.
became
And
nation states. The nation state is not
yeah,
equatable to a nation.
yeah, basically, yeah, and uh, um, so going to my notes. So basically, the center of power, um, the people of the Tigray region, became more and more marginalized as time went on. And so after uh, uh, that, um, Ethiopia got its first taste in guerrilla warfare after the Italians invaded the country in 1936. as part of Italy's Lebensraum, so to speak. And interestingly enough, I didn't know this until very recently. Most of large sections of Ethiopia remained not conquered. Just an interesting factoid there. And I was always under the impression that the whole country was conquered, and it turns out actually no, that's not true. And I also learned that Italy, on top of killing 7% of the population, which is another thing that gets completely forgotten about in the historical record.
Yeah.
It basically became the Italians of Vietnam, basically. There was massive guerrilla warfare against the Italian occupiers, and eventually they stopped reporting completely from Ethiopia by the start of World War II, and eventually the Ethiopian resistance, along with help from the British Empire, managed to drive the Italian occupiers out.
Right.
So that sets that um,
Yeah, but the
part
British
right
ain't
there.
ones to help without a catch.
Yeah.
But I mean, also as well, like Lebensraum is a specific thing. Like that's centered around pure settler colonialism in the model of white Anglo-Saxon settler colonialism, where one makes predominantly Anglo-Saxon settlements where at least 80% of the population are Anglo-Saxon settlers. That's how America was made. What Italy was doing was just settler colonialism in the traditional sense, traditional colonialism, old school colonialism, where they just wanted to take colonies and control and dominate colonies, more similarly to what the British did in India than what they did in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I do know that they did want to set up settlements for Italian peoples to settle in Libya at least. Was it? I think they called it. I'm trying to figure out the exact name. It was called, I believe, the Third Coast, or something along the lines. They wanted to basically turn Libya back into a Roman province per
I mean,
se.
it's likely that they would have done something similar with Ethiopia. It's just like usually it's a
Yeah,
very specific regions they'll do something like it in. That's
Right.
a domineering region. Ethiopia's ripe for it because it's a port. Like that's the key thing. It's a port and it borders a strait, so it's likely that they were gonna do that with it. It's just what's
they
it?
just didn't have the time.
No. I'm just saying that like there's a lot of people who would just turn around to any colony and go, "That's Lebensraum," and it's like no, Lebensraum's quite a specific type of settler colonialism. Like
Right.
Yeah,
like settler colonialism isn't the only form. That's what I mean. It's quite a specific form of traditional colonialism. Traditional colonialism is not just made up of settlerism. That's only one part of what traditional colonialism is made up of.
Right.
Actually, most of the mechanisms of traditional colonialism exist within semi-colonialism, or what people will call neo-colonialism.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm a semantic dickhead, so you know.
and
Oh, and
that's
the
kind of like that's what I was kind of getting at. It's yeah, I wasn't meaning like literal Lebensraum and
No, but
right.
what's it? I've
but
got to be
yeah,
specific with things. This is how I am.
yeah, and with these dickheads, they take anything out of context and
Right.
I'm
I
surprised I haven't
posted.
been taken out of context more, to be honest. I say some fucking stupid shit sometimes.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
I was gonna say that I did post a thing there where it looks like Ethiopia has about 80 different ethnic groups in total. They're like
Yeah,
in charge.
it's the most ethnically diverse country on the planet.
Yeah, sounds about
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of
Post
them.
like
I'm really good with my random fascinating facts, and it's one of the ones I know. The most, not one of, it is the absolute most ethnic diverse country on the planet. You got to think, not even just on number of nations alone, because an ethnic group is in and of itself confiding of nationhood, not entirely, but in most cases. So when you look at it like that, okay, within a land that's, I I think Ethiopia is like a quarter of the size of China, maybe smaller. It's quite a
yeah,
big country. It doesn't look very
it,
big on a map, but it's fucking
It,
huge. It is a huge
it used
country,
to.
but for a
Yeah.
country that is about, so I'm not finished, about a quarter of the size of China, maybe half. I don't know, maybe smaller, maybe larger. They have nearly twice as many. China's got 56 nations, 56 ethnicities. Actually, they might have more ethnicities than that. That's only what's ethnicities are defined as nations. There might be more than 56, but there's 56 defined nations in China. There's 80 ethnicities in Ethiopia, and the land is a much smaller space. So, and China is one of the most diverse
Yeah.
countries on the planet. Like, it's a perfect comparison.
Right, and I don't want to throw it off too much because maybe Gingrich knows more about it. But obviously, there was the Ethiopia or Eritrea thing conflict. So I guess in the past, Ethiopia used to be much bigger on the map, and it's still pretty big. I agree. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I
yeah,
guess
but
they're
in the past
landlocked
it used to
now.
be smaller. It wasn't the size it is now until the late 1880s. Um,
Right.
yeah.
they were trying to be a to be honest, I can't never get a straight line on it. I can't tell whether they were trying to be an opposing force to the rising British and French colonialism, or whether they were doing a Hawaii and trying to, but going another way about it. Hawaii went peaceful. They were going a little more aggressive. We're the guys of East Africa. If you want a powerhouse, we're out for you. You know, like in Israel, sort of, to put it into modern context. Because we got to fucking remember that, like, semi-colonialism got its popularity in the mid 1800s. The British were getting really interested in semi-colonialism. They liked the way it tasted, and so they were starting to implement it in places, albeit to the detestment of people like the Churchill family. Even though they were a bunch of American Frenchmen that were just related to the royals, and that was about as English as they got. But let's it's kind of similar to Boris Johnson, that is actually. But the British were getting very tasteful with neo-colonialism, and so you saw. I mean, this is where you saw the Hawaii sell themselves out to every empire. The British were actually the first to colonize Hawaii, and it was always
Right.
until
It's
the Japanese and the U.S. fight over it.
yeah.
It was always
And it
semi-colonialism. They went from semi-colonialism for decades into just before World War Two. They got fully colonized by the Americans because of the princess selling them out.
They
Um,
actually still have the British styled flag, but it looks a little bit different.
well, it's
But it
it's it's
is,
the OG American flag. That's what the flag of America was before the Revolution.
Yeah,
I
that's the
see.
irony.
Yeah.
Yeah, the American flag, but with the Union Jack. That's the old American flag.
Right.
There is some other
Yeah.
stuff they added to it to make it French and other stuff like that. But I mean, what more do you have to add? I mean, half of Europe uses red, white, and blue, and it's kind of interesting with the French that they would use red, white, and blue because it's like, what is Dutch about the French anymore? They're not really Dutch anymore. I know I'm reducting it by saying Dutch, but the Frankish were they were a mixture of I mean the Dutch, which are part Anglo-Saxon anyway, but like they're a mixture of the Dutch and the Anglo-Saxons and the I can't remember the German group that took Belgium away from the Celts because it used to be Celtic, or was it Celtic at the time still? I can't remember, but they may have some Celtic relations if the people in Belgium at the time were Celtic. But I know that eventually the Germans took over Belgium from the Celts, so I don't know. I know it wasn't called Belgium until the British decided to fucking go and call it Belgium. Yeah, no, well, the English
Right.
Empire invented Belgium as a landing pad to invade France. I think it was the English Empire. It might have been into the British era because I know that Belgium's not a very old country, but I could just imagine me saying British and it was before 1707 or 1737 if you're a legalist. That joke has been a
So
recurring joke, and it still will be a recurring one. Actually, I won't make any promises I can't keep. Don't expect it, but it might come back. We're about
uh,
running jokes on
trade
this show.
trademark. It's autismo hour here.
Every hour is autismo hour in my fucking life.
That's how you say it in Spanish, autismo. Uh-huh.
I think they got it
So,
better, but I like autismoid. It's like
nice.
femoid, and then if you're a femoid or autismoid, you're like a fucking you're a robo commie. Caleb's gonna report you because you didn't share the high tech space minerals with him.
So
Uh,
and
I know.
you were talking about the French. Oh, sorry, JP. Um,
I was just
uh,
saying some dumb shit. Don't worry.
okay.
Autism hour has not ended.
Not how.
So the
So
French.
the French flag. The reason it's red, white, and blue is because red and blue is the colors of Paris, and the white um, is the color of the House of Bourbon.
Are you sure that that's not like
So
a new meaning they've given to it though? Because like
no,
they're
that's
not
I'm
uncommon German colors. That's the thing that confuses me a bit. Especially for
I want.
those who have like what's it been conquered by the Vikings? Because I know that like Britain gets its I keep cutting out on my mic. Britain every time I see it read out on my screen, it's making me prank. Britain gets its red, white, and blue from fucking a mixture of all the different flags. So we're in like a weird, like, it happened by happenstance. Because fortunately for us, our flag in England comes from our Christian culture, not so much from the Norman invasion. I say fortunate enough because the flag means nothing to us as revolutionaries, but like at least it just doesn't have that bad of a history. It's just the Georgian cross, which I like Georgia. I think it's a beautiful country. So I like the
I
fact that
agree.
because we stole their symbol like 2,000 years ago, they've had to like up the ante, and so their flag just looks like the English flag on steroids. Like I love the
Yeah.
Georgian flag though. I think it looks sick. I'm
Yeah.
really into
And
vexillology or however the fuck you say it. Sorry.
yeah, and there's some Putin supporters who pretend to be communists who like to shit on Georgia really hard, and they'll
Bro,
call Stalin a Russian, by the way.
Georgia was one of the
Um,
most revolutionary countries of the Russian Empire. Like, they should hear why Lenin approached Koba, or as we would later to come to know him, Stalin, the man of steel. Koba,
mhm.
um, he was a bank robber, train robber, a newspaper writer and hander outer, a organizer, and the leader of the long roster leader of the Georgian communists, the Georgian Bolshevik Party, and Lenin personally wanted to meet this great Kolbe himself. And he was not disappointed, other than the smoking. Lenin hates smoking. Me and Lumpen-Maoist were joking about it. It's like, Lenin's a based comrade, but I don't think we'd be friends. I wonder if he's fine with the green smoke and he just doesn't like the cigarettes, because I don't blame him. I say that, but
I guess he'd be okay with vaping.
Based.
No, that
I'm guilty.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Open me up
Yeah,
for it.
Nah, it's cool. I'm
No, I
gay
mean,
for the
like-
vape. You got me.
I don't mind a bit of sheesh. I mean, it was like what's it? Someone was talking about how they smoke, and someone was like, "You need to quit," and it's like, nah, it makes me look cool and all, and it's like, nah, it's bad for your lungs. You should just be gay, and they're like, only on Wednesdays and Fridays, and then the person's like, well, I'm gay every day of the week. It was an exchange of the centuries. I came in and I'm like, it seems a problem with us Maoists and smoking.
Yeah.
Fucking, it reminds me of a meme the Germans made where they made like a cigarette ad with Mao Zedong.
Damn it! I swear I'm probably the only anti-smoking Maoist probably that.
Ugh, cringe. An anti-smoker. They're worse than people who don't smoke. We need to beat him with a stick. First lightly, but then if he doesn't change his positions, we'll get harder. That's how Bukharin was tortured. They started off with foam sticks, and they moved up eventually to steel poles.
Awkward silence moment. But anyway, if we there was some stuff I wanted to bring up about Ethiopia because you guys were going on a good tangent about it. Namely in terms of its ethnic diversity. So one of the reasons why Ethiopia is such an ethnically diverse country is because it's the second largest in terms of population wise in Africa. To give you a perspective, Nigeria is the first with about 220 million people.
Yeah, fucking huge
Ethiopia's
Nigeria is.
freaking gigantic. The second is Ethiopia at 125 million-ish.
Gotta think as well, for all those people that say Africa's overpopulated, like I was saying earlier, Ethiopia, landmass wise, is probably. See, I think it's over a quarter the size of China. I think it's probably coming up towards a half. It's a huge landmass. Most of it's unpopulated. Like all those people, those dickheads of the first world will say the world's overpopulated. Nah. Like Nigeria, for example. Nigeria is fucking huge. Its population is smaller than America's, if I remember rightly. So, like, gotta take that into account. Like, Africa is probably one of the most well-known continents for being underpopulated. Like, it's a continent that's bigger than Asia and barely populated compared to it. Asia, on the other hand, for anyone that wants to think that Asia is like behind or want to use racist terms like backwards or anything like that, Asia would have been the leader capitalist sort of side of the world if it wasn't for the wars between the East and the West that have been going on for centuries. I mean, like, the Opium Wars held back China from taking Germany's place as the next rising capitalist empire. Like, it would have been China that would have been cruxing onto industrialization in the latter end of the 1800s and building itself up and being on the world stage if it wasn't for the Opium Wars, both of them, in my opinion. I think that they'd have had an even greater advantage than even Russia in its development. What's it? It's sort of like this great myth with that end of the world, but like what people have to understand, the reason why Asia has probably the largest percentile of population in the world for all the racists who want to think it's to do with breeding or anything like that, it's nothing to do. It's because that they've always had a very high protein rate in their nutrition. They eat a lot of insects and other different foods like that. Their diet is so much more diverse than ours, but also they have a very strong carbohydrates in their diets. And they're a healthy amount of soy for all those that might be afraid of soy. Soy is a very intrinsic ingredient in many Asian countries, but the high protein diets. And so Asia, for most parts of its existence, has fostered greater living conditions than any other continent, including Europe. Very good nutrition rates for most of its existence until China decided recently to start damming the rivers that are essential to the high fish, high insect protein based diet of most of South Asia, the South China region,
Yeah.
Cambodia, and other Indo-China Chinese countries. Vietnam's been hit by it too.
Yeah,
Bit of
100%.
what's it called, anthropology for you.
But
I was out. Yeah. Oh, you can go, Gangers.
no. You go first. You go first.
Oh, I was just
Polite
gonna say
society.
that one of the other countries that's giving weapons to Ethiopia as well is Israel.
No surprise
Yeah.
there. Israel,
Yeah.
Ethiopia, South Africa, these countries always seem to show solidarity for each other in their very apartheid-like genocides. I mean, with Israel and South Africa, quite strictly apartheid. I mean, thing people need to understand is apartheid has not ended in South Africa. That's why one of the things that drives so much hatred for Mandela stabbed everyone in the back. Like,
Yeah.
apartheid's still going on in South Africa.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we got some communists who are still praising Mandela and saying that his opposition are ultra and all that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Though you'll
And
have people
calling-
like Caleb Bopper who put weird emphasis on the word British when they say that the British were controlling them. It almost seems like the whole Larouchian thinkers use the term British to
Right.
actually mean the word Jews as an anti-Semitic dog whistle thing is more true than it might people might catch on to. The British did control South Africa and dominate them with capital, but it's not like they had Mandela on puppet strings. It would have been a hard decision to make, and he might have made nasty enemies in the process, but it would have been the principal position to take. I mean, I just read today Lenin's left-wing childishness. So that's where I read a quote from on the start of this. And Lenin gets into one important point on defensism. And it's like, the defensism of those that wanted to join the war. On principle, the Bolsheviks were opposed to that. But the principled support of defensism at the Bolshevik position, now coming from the context of the position of power held within the Soviet Union of Republics, is that we as an organized society understand that the proletarian state is not strong enough to withstand an outward conflict of the bourgeoisie, so one goes into a more defensive position. One doesn't sacrifice one's principles, though. This is where Lenin gets into the concept of, okay, well, we do what we can to agitate the conditions for socialist development and economic outlet. The state capitalist and socialist forces will be against that of the private capitalist and petty bourgeois forces within the state apparatus. And in this process, you go on the defense. In South Africa, that should have been the same mentality. They should have made the hardline positions to oust the white settlers that hold dominance over the economy, and then go on the defense, try and avoid the battle that would be to ensue with the imperialists, and try and lock down as a stronghold. That was the position the Soviet Union made example to. That's why anywhere from Mandela's mistakes to Chavez's mistakes to Gaddafi's mistakes to fucking what's his name from Egypt, Nasser's mistakes. it always compounds into the same business. The petty bourgeoisie go too easy on things. You know, and when it comes to this genocide that's going on in Tigray, the quickest people to obscure this, just as they obscured the genocide in Ethiopia during the Soviet Union's era, are these petty bourgeois socialists in the first world that would be more better off called fascists than they ever would be called socialists. They are neo-feudalists, and they support the what was the name of that Ethiopian fucking empire from the Cold War?
Are we talking? Which one are we talking
The
about?
bomb backed by the Soviet Union.
Oh, it was okay. So it was originally ruled by okay. So it was ruled by the Derg, but it was called
That's it. There you go. The Derg. That's the one I'm
Yeah.
looking for. They back the Derg as quick as they can because they want to be edgy and oppose the principled Maoists that were fighting for the freedom of the many ethnicities of Ethiopia. You know, that might have been the one chance Ethiopia would have had of not having to separate, you know, and be a united conglomeration of many ethnicities. That trust is going to have gone now. It's like, what's it? There's been attempted times in the past of English, Welsh, coming out together and trying to leave together and forming a new. That ain't gonna happen next time around. Like the English, the Welsh, the Scottish, the Irish, they're all gonna be split up from each other. Well, the Celts won't be. They'll be together, but they ain't gonna be trusting no English straight away. They're gonna be fucking. I mean, they ain't gonna just distrust us and throw us aside, but they ain't gonna fucking throw open arms and bring us in after all we've done. Same with the Lowlander Scots. I think the Lowlander Scots are gonna be invited open arms by the Ulsters or the Irish or the Welsh. Nah. No one's welcoming us types in with fucking open arms as it is anyway. Even those with otherwise blood, you know, like regardless, any of us who have even a shred of Anglo blood in us, therefore have Celtic blood in our hands, at least historically speaking. It's something that we all got to acknowledge. Genocide is a multi-generational process.
Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
And all that as someone who's half Celtic.
So, go back a bit to Ethiopia and where we're at in terms of Ethiopia's liberated during World War II from the fascist.
A step forward.
However, a step forward. Obviously, Ethiopia getting taken over by the fascist was something we very much opposed. The Soviet Union didn't recognize it, and other countries.
Right.
But the problem is oh
no, the dreaded however.
When Haile Selassie took power again, he brought back the landed aristocracy and the usual bad shit you get from an imperial dynasty like that.
I know those dreaded words, feudal aristocracy, was gonna come up. It's like you're trying to make me angry. I'm only jesting with you, but like that is always ends up being the case, isn't it? Like the neo-feudalism always ends up cropping up. So it's one fascist to another at this point. Like, and this is very neo-feudal. Like, it's quite bare bones. I mean, it more neo-feudal than I think even the fascists commit themselves to.
Yeah.
Because this is a pure uprising of what, like an aristocracy that's at that point 200, 300 years old, like, you know, in its making, like an old feudal aristocracy from the sort of beginnings of the Ethiopian Empire. Like, that's a
definitely
mad things.
So during Haile Selassie's rule, and keep in mind too, he's the last emperor of Ethiopia. After him, it's dissolved and he's assassinated. But during his rule, the Harai people were persecuted in the Harari region. There was a famine in Tigray in 1958. Various rebellions that broke out throughout his rule, described by Human Rights Watch during his rule as autocratic and illiberal. The Oromo language was banned from education, along with during his time of rule, Ethiopia was a major supporter of the United States during the Cold War, and was very cozy with other various regimes as well, like Israel and other such countries.
Of course.
Birds of a feather stick together, as they would say.
Fucking hell, that's a saying I haven't heard for some time. He's got a book, I guarantee. He's got a little book of old sayings. Like, yeah, take that one off. I use that one for a bit.
I got the Caleb Maupin book right here.
Book of white Christian fucking quotes. I mean, fucking the guy has beige short shorts. Like, is he trying to be a slutty mailman?
Ooh, you're getting a little too lewd right
spicy.
here. This is too spicy here. I got to report you to the CPI.
Oh shit.
So, interestingly, to go to Eritrea, Eritrea was originally a Italian colony. So after the war, Italy, I think, okay, so the weird thing is, I think they gave up all their colonies, but the weird thing is, I think Somalia was given back to Italy up until like 1960 when they had to give it up again, or something like that.
Sounds like something the British would do, considering that the British dominated both Ethiopia and Somalia at the end of the war. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, but Eritrea, the British took control of Eritrea, and in 1952, as a consolation prize to Ethiopia, the British decided to give them Eritrea, not to give it independence or anything like that. They're going to just give it to another country.
well, we were trying out that whole newfangled neo-colonialism, so we were baiting them into the World Bank. I mean, well, before the World Bank existed, but we were baiting them into an imperial relationship. I forget that the World Bank didn't exist until 1960.
Yeah.
Which is quite early. I think the IMF was
Into
over
the
like
Bretton Woods system.
the IMF
Right.
was very new around that time as well. Like Britain was pretty quick on to a lot of things, even into the Cold War. It's kind of one of the things as to why I tell people not to underestimate the United States. You know, they're in the same position the British was at that point in time, and they're going to still have tricks in their book, just like the British did.
Yeah, they're taking notes down from the British. They're just going like,
The thing is, though,
Right.
is that it seems like the British are more capable imperialists than the Americans, same as the French. I'd be afraid of the French. The French seem more like capable imperialists than the Americans. But I find that might be Eurocentrism in the way in which it creates a chauvinism over the. I mean, America's Eurocentric as well, but you know what I mean. There's a chauvinism in
Yeah.
Europe over Americans, but I've had a lot of Americans spout this type of mentality as well, so I don't know. But then again, you got American fetishism over European imperialism as well. It gets complicated, but the Russians and the Chinese are certainly outpacing everyone when it comes to competence. It's terrifying, really, and that's where it comes into you got the big imperialist powers supporting Ethiopia as well. Now, I mean, like the
Yeah.
US seems to be on and off all the time with its support, but then you've got like Britain and France are not so much. Britain and France have been hardline supporters of Somalia against Ethiopia. The US seems to keep changing its mind.
Yeah. However,
Because like,
the Europe.
wasn't Trump trying to get in there because the Europeans were in there? Because it seems that the Democrats just want to stay in line with Ethiopia.
I know that the EU is trying to change its mind on Ethiopia only because they are kind of like worried about Russia right now. It's opportunism with these imperialists,
So what about
obviously.
that calls the question? What about the British? Are they going to stick with Somalia, or are they going to try and get into Ethiopia's pocket? Because they put a lot of stock
I
into that war. I mean, they've had the SAS deployed in that
Right,
war for fucking years now. Back when I was in high school.
Yeah.
right. I was gonna say I forgot, but you
Sorry, my
guys keep
bad.
going. Oh, it's fine.
Uh, but Ethiopia historically was so well. I mean, in the War of Terror, the War of Terror, as we should call it, when it
Yeah,
started in
Yeah.
that's one thing I've
2001.
heard Adam call it as, and I think it's sick.
It was coined, I think, by I forget who. It was like the day of 9/11. Somebody said that on some television. I cannot for the life of me remember. But yeah, it was like we support. Was it an Israeli prime minister? Okay, so it was an Israeli prime minister, if my memory serves correctly, and he was saying,
Freudian slip.
We support your war of terror." And I was like, this is like trademark the best moment ever
This
when that
shit
Yeah.
happened.
slaps.
You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah,
like
no,
watching
yeah.
those fascists yesterday. Like fucking hell. Like
Oh yeah,
nerd.
or them talking about, wow, this is so great, when it's like they're talking about like
Oh yeah, like
spying.
they found out that they bugged the shit, and like it's like, yep, no, America should be more like this, and it's like, oh my god, like I would be, I'm just sitting here horrified that they bugged and spied the fuck out of them, and they're like pretty smart stuff, and I'm like, see, this is the thing. Like a comrade I was speaking to said is that like at least the one relief when it comes to dealing with culture thug is the guy is like unabashedly a fascist. Like he's gonna tell you porky pies about history. I mean, even about stuff that has managed to catch him on, although it was easy history points about fascism nonetheless. Um, he's still gonna tell you. He's gonna tell you the porkies, but he's gonna unabashedly tell you that he likes Mussolini and that he likes Hitler, and he's gonna tell you that like he likes a corporatist model. He's gonna tell like it's a lot cozier dealing with someone like that because I already know what I'm dealing with. I don't have to consider the different variables that summarize this guy as a fascist. I know he's a fascist from the beginning.
Right.
That's the baseline. I can just figure things
Yeah.
out from there. No
And,
no
and he
enigma. Straight to the
and he
point.
calls himself culture thug because it's connected to like Mussolini's movement or something.
Well, I mean, the
Yeah.
guys, a modern fascism rides off Mosleysm. That's what I seem to have noticed. Oswald Mosley seems to be the pinnacle fascist ideologue of the 20th century.
Yeah.
I mean, for all the funny pictures you can find of him getting the shit beaten out of him, he's a dangerous thinker. He's like Nietzsche, like, don't underestimate him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's both horrifying and he also has that kind of buffoonish kind of like, well, all fascists have this kind of like buffoonishness to them.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not so
Mussolini,
much that the
like,
guy is the buffoon, like, it's just, there's enough pictures of him getting the shit kicked out of him that like a lot of
Right.
Marxists in the first world have this very supremacal mentality about themselves towards fascists. So pictures of him being the shit kicked out of him would be enough for people to dismiss him as an ideologue. And it's like, did they see Hitler? Hitler wasn't fucking winning no fights anytime soon. He isn't a moron. Oswald Mosley's quite the same. He's no moron. He might be a. Might got the shit fucking thrown down out of him, but he ain't no moron. And I wouldn't underestimate someone like Oswald Mosley, because if you actually look at China's foreign policy, and I need to go through it. I'm gonna watch the whole interview because I've actually found the interview that Mosley divulges his foreign policy, and I'm gonna go through it. And if I can chop it up into a neat enough video, or they might still take it down for that. I might do a breakdown of it, but I need to go through it first anyway and see how concise it is, and just show people what a real fascist thinker is and how they operate and how fluently they speak and the mannerisms and how they can attain towards abstracts and how they operate and the way he concludes what he wants and sees in his position as a British politician. He never stopped wanting to be involved in office. I mean, he used his peerage to be involved in the House of Lords anyway, but I mean, like, he got hereditary peerage from his father. Oswald Mosley was a prominent figure in British public until his death, and there's a prominent fan base. I mean, the British Nationalist Party, before it was forced to disband and form into different groups, the British Nationalist Party is made up of Mosleyites. The leader, Nick
Yeah.
Griffin, has a bust of Oswald Mosley on his desk.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. We
So
should
this
not
one, I mean, you gotta look
underestimate
at like
Tucker.
Ethiopia's main imperialist interests, supporters, is China and Russia.
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
also point out, within the languages within Ethiopia, like there is no Ethiopian language. There's just multiple languages.
There's
Um,
Yeah.
tens of languages. Like there's a lot.
yeah,
There's
there's technically
Yeah.
90. Yeah, and yeah, 90 at least since 2007.
Yeah.
90. I
There's
don't
as
even think
many as
China has that many languages.
yeah. There's as many languages as there are people. Probably even more languages than there are
Yeah,
people. I was thinking
there's.
about that for a second.
I don't
Right,
even think Nigeria has that many languages.
right.
Yeah.
Like they
Uh.
probably like that's like I'm saying, like they're the most diverse country on the planet. Like you just can't find a comparison, because I even though China is 56 nations, like I don't think there's 56 languages. I might be wrong. I'll swallow my words if I am, but I don't think there is a language for every nation in China. But I probably will end up swallowing my words and find out I'm completely wrong and there's more than 56 languages in China. I will swallow those words with dignity, but I'm pretty certain there isn't a viable source of information. Don't take my word on shit. I've always looked things up. Anything that comes out of my mouth should be fucking checked, double checked, and triple checked, quadruple checked. Check it till you can no longer check it no more.
Check mate.
Yeah, one of the languages for Tigray is Tigrinya, I think it's pronounced. Um, yeah, there's just a lot of diversity in Ethiopia of people, languages, even religion, historically as
Well,
well.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the first places to embrace Christianity, and I mean, like, old school Christianity, like, we're talking
Yeah,
like Gnostic shit.
yeah. The Russians did try. There's all kinds of Christianity there too. Really, yeah.
Well, I
But
mean, the
yeah, that's true as
Ethiopian,
well.
I mean, well, what we would call Ethiopians, like, those mass groups of people have had a massive common relationship with the Assyrian and Arab population of West Asia and the Greek population of West Asia. They've also had a common relationship with Egypt. I mean, when the Egypt Empire dominated that region, Ethiopia's target. I mean, Same with any other empire that tries to dominate that region. They're going to want Kenya. They're going to want Ethiopia. They're strategic regions to dominate. That's why, actually, to be fair, your Labour's 1 point probably wasn't too far off the catch, because Ethiopia is a very, very strategic position to have. It's, it's like it's like northeast of the British Raj in India. Um, that was where where New Delhi is and all that lot.
Right.
That was a core center of British power in the region. It's where the Governor General of the East India Trade Corporation and eventually the British Raj, when the British got sick of the East India Trade Corporation undermining its imperialist interests for its own bourgeois interests. It's kind of funny to note that the whole ANCAP thing failed a long time ago, and the British kind of got really pissed off with it, and that's why the British Raj existed. Like they couldn't control the East India Trade Corporation like they thought they could.
And caps destroyed again.
I like that. There's like a 24-hour video on YouTube where it has like Jason waiting in an elevator for Ancapistan, and it plays like elevator music.
He should have
It's
actually
pretty.
recorded himself in a lift. That would have been even funnier.
I think I saw a preview for that once. Yeah,
I
I
want
know the
I
one you're
want
talking
the
about.
full lift experience. I'm disappointed.
Yeah,
Dislike.
yeah, and it just loops, and Jason's just like looking around, like every side, like every 20 seconds.
I mean, like, Caleb was supporting it with the truckers at the start of the year, but I mean, like, to keep on topic though, it's like with this genocide that's going on in Tigray, it's very similar to the genocides that have been going on in Yemen and Palestine, and there's one very key aspect, and that's that in the first world, people are more bothered about Taiwan or Ukraine than they are about these genocides. And I would also sort of explicitly put forward as well that with Taiwan, that's quite interesting. Biden in October last year said directly to Nancy Pelosi, had Nancy Pelosi's, no, Biden said this directly to him, and Nancy Pelosi went over later. Biden said directly to him in October last year that they do not seek to subvert the one China policy. So all the shit that's happening in Taiwan now is theatrics. You ain't gonna get your invasion. You ain't gonna get your war. Not there. There will be a war between these empires at some point. It ain't gonna happen there.
Yeah.
The US does not
gonna-
want to get nuked. They want to fight for empire, for colonial space, and Taiwan is not a space they're gonna win. They know that. They want to fight for
Yeah.
Africa. They want to fight for the Middle East or West Asia, as it's probably called. They want to fight for South America, places where they can win and where they don't have to resort to nuclear war on either front. They don't want to nuke the enemy. They don't want to get nuked. No one wants to use nukes. Even the capitalists, in all their deranged nature, no one wants to use
Right.
fucking nukes. Except, well, actually, I
Exactly.
wouldn't put it past the petty bourgeoisie. They probably think Fallout's a fun idea. Don't
Yeah.
put it past them. It's not ask them. I don't want to get proven wrong. Just if they try and answer, you tell them to face the wall before they even say anything. Don't let it.
The only type of group of people I could think of that are really gung ho about a nuclear war are actually the Duginists. They really want the apocalypse type of
They want the
thing.
dolphin master race stuff. Have they been reading Passad?
Maybe, and Dugin has like a very eschatological thing with his neo-Eurasianism.
I mean,
Like he
his
wants like a
denouncement of
nuclear war.
Nazis sums up as they focused a bit too much on race. That's it.
Yeah.
That's all he says. He just then goes on this
Yeah.
diatribe about like
Yeah.
social structural actor. Like he's a determinist. Like strip away the idealistic phrasing that he uses. That he's even admitted in parts of works where he's like, yeah, he only speaks like that because it attracts religious people and basically
Yeah.
strengthens their numbers. He doesn't really give a shit about religion. Like it's just something he
Yeah.
uses. Like he's admitted that it's a
Yeah.
tool. Like
Yeah, I mean, he's like a super like relativist in like the tactical, like, he wants to like go beyond neo-Machiavellianism, really. Yeah, and
yeah,
talks
and he
about
just
chaos
changes his
magic.
positions to suit the situation to push that shit.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I 100%. All these fucking dickheads. So anyway, back to Ethiopia. 'Cause, man, we got a lot of history to go over, so I'm gonna try to speed it up a bit. Um,
Oh, we've already whacked
uh, uh,
114 minutes out. Jesus Christ.
that's pretty good, I'd say. All right. So anyway, Ethiopia and Eritrea become a quote federation with each other.
See
With
where this is going.
Eritrea, yeah, I, you know where this is going. With Eritrea granted an autonomous part of Ethiopia. However,
Oh,
that
God.
lasted from 1952 until 1962, so about a whole 10 years. And then Emperor Selassie said, "Yeah, we're done with this shit." And then he slapped the ban hammer on and then turned it into a province, basically, uh,
Ah,
which kicked
sounds
off the
similar to like fucking how China went from being a load of autonomous regions to a load of provinces. Actually, China's a bit different. It's a weird, like, corporate, like, broken down corporate system, but nonetheless, the provinces are a lot less autonomous than one might presume. One would think from a socialist country, they're more autonomous
Yeah,
in the sense of like corporate the control over the system is autonomous, but then again, it's not because it's all dictated by how much the Communist Party mediates debt. But yeah, no, this is a common practice of empires strengthening up. I mean, like, it's too bad our Argentinian comrade has gone because I mean, like, this was a similar thing that happened with the uh, the rise of um, what's it, uh, Peron
Peronism or
and his want to dominate the
uh,
neighboring
Peron.
nations, and you had the
Yeah,
similar thing with the dictatorship as well. For different reasons.
yeah,
They went about different bases. You had Peron first being quite first world fascist type originally, trying to be his own
yeah,
empire in the region, which I mean, Argentina could have very much have shaped up to be a big empire. It had the capacity to do so. It still does, but instead he gets captured by the army, comes back to power. Next thing you know, he likes the U.S. What happened there? But still wants to dominate around the region. U.S. now, I imagine, as a counter to European, French and British colonialism and the Soviet Union in the region. The U.S. was trying to take over as much hegemonic control as it could over the other empires. But within that process, they want to absorb as many nations as they can when they get on this expansionist mentality. They start wanting to integrate them as provincial regions to their nations, make them under Bhutanese.
yeah,
I mean, especially
centralized.
with these settler colonial nations, because they're so arbitrary in their existence in the first place, it doesn't matter to them what they crush and take.
Yeah, definitely. And so that sparks off the Eritrean War of Independence with the EPLF. You guys got to start writing down the acronyms here because this is when it starts getting little bit confusing with the acronyms.
Fucking
So the
Americans and your
Eritrean,
goddamn acronyms.
so the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. This is a Maoist organization. Began a
Nice.
guerrilla warfare in Eritrea that lasted until the 1990s when Eritrea became independent. And this was mostly supported by China, Libya, Somalia, Syria against, the originally the Ethiopian Empire, but
Also against the
eventually,
Soviet Union as well.
yeah, that's what I was going to get. So yeah, after the Ethiopian Empire fell, the Derg took over.
Which
The
was just
Mar-
like the Ethiopian Empire with a new fucking name. Like, they were terrible.
the Ethiopian Empire with a red star, and they were very
Guys, the
well. It's kind of
Soviet
like the
Union under the neo-feudalists said that they were socialists.
yeah. Well, they were very much for Soviet nostalgic imagery wise. They would use things like like the Red Star, or they loved calling things like the October Revolution or other such things. And again, it's all this like they would have gotten great with like the Pat socks. Let's just say it would have been like
Yeah.
buddy buddy heaven, and it was supported by the Soviet Union, um, mostly against the Maoist forces in Eritrea, along with eventually the TPLF, um, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. So you got the EPLF, and then you got the TPLF. I think there was also an EPF. What was it? It was the Ethiopian Liberation Front. No, it was the Ethio. It was another group as well that was also engaged in armed struggle. Now the Tigray People's Liberation Front that engaged in struggle against the Derg, a so-called Marxist-Leninist military junta, quote unquote, was a Hojist party, and it was made of like radical elements calling for independence for Tigray. Um,
Anti-revisionist
um,
Marxist Leninists obey.
yeah, basically, and they were not convinced that the Derg would not lead to a genuine socialist revolution, or correctly resolve the Ethiopian national question. Um, both of which did turn out to be true because under the Derg, they highly centralized everything, the government-wise. So there was no kind of federation or anything like that. And there was also mass famine as well during the 80s.
I felt the stress in that stretch then, like the
Yeah.
spine pain.
Well, I got a pretty. I was working all night.
Oh man,
I
yeah,
hate
I
my
know,
job,
like fucking man.
unloading trucks.
So the thing is, he's on the night shift at pharmacy, so he's got to do all of the fucking stocking and checking things up.
And it's a truck night too, so you got to do all like the back, like picking shit up and other stuff.
Always remember to pick
And
up
you
your
can't,
knees.
yeah, and you're not supposed to take a break or anything like that. Work like
Mm.
9 or 10 hours straight. It's fucking hot too. But
That
what was
fucking uh, might as well be putting the hot sauce in your pee hole. But yeah, no,
Anyway,
mass famine.
mass famine. They were engaged in war with pretty much. Well, Ethiopia was actually engaged in a war with Somalia, of all things, as well. There was
Jesus
it was a disaster.
Somalia
More or
and
less.
Ethiopia and the fucking constant need for the imperialists to point them against each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, because I
And
imagine that, like, what's it? Either the British or the Americans would have been dominating Somalia at the time, so it's the Americans and the Soviet Union going to war with each other. They're proxy warring in so many different countries, you know.
Yeah,
right.
you lose track
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, and
I mean,
Ethiopia was
fuck, there's
also
wars where they've changed from the side against the US to with the US. Like,
yeah.
like they've gone on for that long. Like, because
Right.
China is supporting the socialists. They're like, oh no. And then they'll go join the US faction. Oh, okay. This is. And then the
Yeah.
DPRK will support the US faction. You know, what the fuck is going on here? Ah, that's right.
Yeah.
Shit. Nothing
Yeah.
was worse than having to swallow the bullet on the DPRK. Like, I love them so much, but like, I gotta accept that the Maoists are right. Like the even if they have socialism there, it's a right deviation, and therefore like more neo feudal than it would be socialist.
Ethiopia was
Yeah.
also a founding member of the non-aligned movement, which is the whole, Tito went to go visit Ethiopia in like 74 or 70.
Did Tito support
Um,
Israel?
yeah, Tito supported Israel, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and I mean like DPRK claimed to be non-alignment, yet they supported the Soviet Union in most of its imperialist ambitions. So
Does the non-aligned movement even exist anymore?
It's practically over.
yeah, don't make me
Yeah.
laugh. Basically dead now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, France, Britain, America, China, Russia, they destroyed it. Germany,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
they dominate most
Um,
nations of the world now. This is why World War is basically on the brink of happening because there's not much space for them to take anymore now. Like, I mean, the fact, think about it this way: they were Russians and Americans were ramming each other off roads, doing blockades, shit like that, to bottleneck each other's movements in Syria. The fact that they were bashing together like that means that space is running low. Like they've been able to do their own thing for ages without having to touch tips. Now they're touching tips, like physically, not like through proxy forces either. They're physically touching tips.
And not in the cool gay way either. But
And I mean, these genocides are gonna be a process of the imperialists ramping up for war. When they want to take space, they're gonna. What we're seeing in Palestine, Yemen, and Tigray, this is the start. This is not the end of it.
yep.
yeah.
So eventually, the leader of the Derg, I cannot for the life of me say that name.
What's it
Meg-
posted in the
Magus,
chat?
Magus, Mengustu. Let's just go with that.
Post it in the chat, and I'll be able to. I can probably say it.
I'm even worse. I love these fucking. But yeah. So anyway, I posted it.
Oh, you posted it in the chat. I thought he was gonna do it.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter. I got it. Okay. Um, either Mengistu or Mengistu. Mengistu Haile Mariam. I think it's Mengistu.
Yeah,
Mengistu Haile Mariam.
yeah. When that geezer left, interesting fact, he's still alive apparently.
Oh,
At the ripe old age of 85, in uh, Zimbabwe of all places. Okay.
yeah, Zimbabwe is not the place it was once. What it once
Yeah.
was.
And with the Derg defeated, Eritrea became an independent country again in 1993, and voted almost uh,
That's a hard time to be a
unanimous.
country the size of Eritrea. Fucking hell.
Yeah, yeah, especially in the 1990s or whatever the.
No big countries to support you that's socialist. All of them are imperialist.
Yeah, and with that, the TPLF, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, the Hoshes Party, eventually it became like it joined with like two other parties to form like a coalition party with each other. Um, and they basically ruled Ethiopia as like a coalition government kind of thing up until 2012 when the TPLF leader died, and this is when things started falling apart for the TPLF because uh, like we don't want to get too much into like the whole you know like
We'd say that like
great leader kind of thing.
The Chinese imperialist element got stronger
Yeah,
as the
that too.
communist element went down. Like, cause that's kind of a weird thing. So wouldn't expect the Holshists to be very fond of Chinese imperialism.
No.
And
And then the Chinese influence started growing and growing.
but I could be wrong. It
And
wouldn't surprise me if the Chinese influence was growing from the 90s, though. Because, I mean, Chinese influence in Africa has been a long standing thing. I mean, in 2004, they dominated more than half of African markets. 4 years after they really got their exporting capital process thing started in 2000 was supposed to be the start of the policy, but they kind of started it in the late 80s anyway. But it really financed capital exportation really properly kicked off with China in 1999, like 2000, and they started their full exportation of capital to Africa.
yeah, and what is it? What's it? So yeah, the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front. Eventually, they lost, any kind of influence outside of Tigray. Eventually, there was a new party created in Ethiopia called, with the Orwellian name, the Prosperity Party. Gotta love these names. That is the current ruling party of the current Ethiopian Prime Minister, and I believe he is the current Prime Minister in terms of ethnic descent, because we got to look at this from both a geopolitical. So there's like the geopolitical thing that we need to take into account with like foreign policy wise of both Africa domestically. Then you got the international stage of who's supporting it, but you also got to look at the ethnic divide because Ethiopia after 1991 became what they call I'll look up the exact term, but I think it's called an ethno federation. I think Ethno Federation. I think that's the act. There's a Wikipedia article, I think, on it. I know it's here.
Wikipedia.
Damn it.
Because
It's
it's
got
a
the Wikipedia article, so
pee
it
poo
must
poo
be true.
website. Guys, I read it up on Wikipedia.
um, uh, I don't know exactly where it is, but yeah, it was called an ethno federation, basically. So there would be like, um, Ethiopia isn't like the most apartheid state in the world in terms of sectarian divide, but like all these ethnic groups, like they'll marry inter in between each other and other such things, but it's the usual kind of like uh, the usual kind of like if one is prospering, the other is resenting it because they're not as prospering as much as them, and there's fights over resources, other such things, and political power. It's the usual kind of bullshit like
I
that.
think it comes more into the fact of, well, when you've got an imperial culture, anyone
Yeah,
that tries to break away gets seen with a disdain. Like, that's what's happened with a lot of the Southerners and their opinions of the Scottish and their wants to leave. It's the same opinion they have of the North English that want to leave. The same opinion they have of the Welsh that want to leave. Even the fucking Irish. Like, after 800 years of just non-stop genocide of the Irish, after over 1,000 years of genocide of the Bretons and Anglo-Saxon and Lowland Scottish, still won't relent and they want to dominate the region. And I mean, that's what you'll get with the ruling sectors of Ethiopian Empire. Even those of Tigrayan descent, you'll find that you'll get them be self-hating Tigrayans.
yeah,
It's like people
president
that
of
think if you got a Mizrahi Jew in power in fucking Israel that would change anything. It's like
yeah,
thinking a black president would change anything. No,
uh,
it's just new flashy colors to things because they will be self-hating because it's in their interest. In their interest to
well
do that. They
the
wouldn't be in that power basis if it wasn't in their interest.
yeah, well the president of Eritrea, um, he's literally a self-hating Tigrayan from the aristocracy. So you're 100% right on that one. What's it? So in Ethiopia, from what I've um, from what I've looked up, there's a lot of resentment from some people of Tigrayan peoples because people of Tigray tend to have a little bit. I'm not trying to emphasize like there isn't like massive amounts of poverty throughout all this area, but they have a little bit higher standard of living than other parts of Ethiopia. Not by much, but just a little bit more. And there are a lot, a lot more people. Like they view them like an ethnic group that's more entrepreneurial, more successful. You get this from like certain people who like view certain kind of like immigrant groups like this.
So I mean, there's almost
Spirit.
like a eugenic mentality in that they're seeing that mainland Ethiopia. I say mainland; they're all connected, but you know what I mean. Like Ethiopia
Yeah,
itself is seeing that Eritrea or Tigray, both maybe both nations that sees it like this, are like there's some of its best ethnicities if we're gonna put this into this very social Darwinistic method that it seems to be that they're looking at it through. And
yeah, base.
they're basically therefore then suggesting that because their prosperous nature comes from this supposed eugenic character that they're throwing over them, that if they were therefore in in Ethiopia, it would benefit them. And I guess it goes also another way as well. The resource rich nature of Eritrea, for example. I mean, that comes into play in their method as well. There will be a lot of mechanical economicism, but a lot of it as well will be this very sort of um, weird social Darwinism that the petty bourgeoisie likes to dabble in. Um, they're very obsessed with hierarchies and structures, so and archetypes of peoples. So this very eugenic mentality about the Eritreans and Tigrayans would not be too surprising from their dominance
Yeah,
by
100%. And so there is like that, and there's um huge ethnic, conflicts throughout Ethiopia as well. Like um uh, interestingly enough, before the conflict in Tigray even broke out, there was speculation that um, there was going to be conflict in the Oromo region of Ethiopia. The Oromo people of the south, who make up the largest ethnic group in Ethiopia. Um, well, interestingly enough, they actually did. Well, some parts of the Oromo Liberation Front actually did eventually take the opportunity of the Tigrayan War to engage in their own insurgency in the south. So that's that. As the old saying goes, uh, England's misfortune is Ireland's benefit, or something like that. I probably butchered the living hell out of that. But yeah, no,
yeah.
yeah, um, uh, so 2018, the Tigrayan ruling party was dissolved. New party took power. In 2019, the Prosperity Party took power, and they're the current ruling party
The
of
Tories of
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia.
The the ones who want good old liberalism
You know, the
in there.
Conservative Party tried to get Tory marked down as an ethnic slur.
An ethnic slur.
Yeah, I'm like, what? It was either an ethnic slur or like as some form of discrimination. They wanted some token piece thing, and it's like, it's just only only with the Conservatives say something so stupid.
That reminds me of this like
Absolutely.
extreme. There was an extremist group of of a group. I forget which one it was, but it was a group of gay Republicans in 2017
No,
who
probably
in North
Dave
Carolina.
Rubin.
Dave Rube. No, this is another guy, unfortunately. No, this is who wanted to fly in a LGBT pride parade in North Carolina in Charlotte. They wanted a pro-Trump, pro part of the parade, and they cited discrimination when they were denied access to the parade. I wonder why.
What's it? So the secret persona that Jordan Peterson doesn't want to tell us about, but definitely exists.
Yeah.
One thing I'd add to that is that there is the group called the Log Cabin Republicans. They even got a website, and that's like the alleged quote unquote pro LGBTQ group for the GOP. But although in Texas, the GOP there, the state convention, just voted to declare marriage equality as abnormal, quote unquote. So I guess that's been kind of split now.
Marriage is abnormal. Like, fuck your mom? Question mark.
Well, I mean that's been their policy for years, so that's not anything
Right.
new.
U.S. fucking
and
policy is for
Yeah, they're just reaffirming it now that,
morons.
the Roe era is over, essentially.
The Roe v. Wade is versus is something that the Americans felt was too long for print either. So fuck the VS. We're just gonna put V. Like,
Sometimes they put a period after the V as well.
well, yeah, because there's supposed to be a period after the VS. Because it enforces a capital. So,
yeah, no.
could be Roe
So-
VS Wade.
And so I pretty much set the stage for the Tigray war. However, we need a few more. I need to set up a few more dominoes, or
He's been playing
or
dominoes
whatever.
the whole time.
You've been playing dumb. I need to set up a few more pieces before you can fully understand the conflict. So Ethiopia and Eritrea. After Eritrea became independent, Ethiopia and Eritrea became bitter enemies with each other. They had at least a couple dozen wars. And interestingly, fun fact as well, most people so this is another thing that would go with Western chauvinism per se, or Eurocentric, I guess is another term as well. The idea that the only kind of wars, World War II style wars that was ever fought was in Europe, and that was it. Like, first of
Yeah.
all, no. In fact, if anything, uh, uh, uh,
These
the
wars tend to
Iran-Iraq
start
war.
in the colonies. I mean, like World
Yeah.
War One and World War Two didn't start in
I'm
Europe.
I'm talking about mechanized warfare of trenches and
Yeah, but that's what I
you
mean.
know what I'm
Like
saying.
World War One and World War Two were mostly fought out in the colonies, not in Europe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like these things did
But-
come back to Europe, sure, but these things were fought out in Africa, Southeast Asia, to a lesser degree South America. I mean, one thing people don't know: Cuba was involved in World War One.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, on the side of the Americans.
Of the Allies, I think.
Well,
was
yeah,
it?
but I mean, they were just the Americans dominated Cuba at this point in time. This is post Spanish American War.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
And
Cuba, Puerto Rico, they were forced to join the American army to make up its ranks, same as the African people. African people at home were massacred throughout the 1910s, known as the Red Summer Massacres. And the key ones that happened around 1917 to 1922 were masked up by the US government, federal and state, as killing Bolshevik spies.
yeah.
You got your dominoes to set up, like.
What so what I was gonna say is yeah. So there was actual massive armies fighting each other in Ethiopia with I'm talking large tank battles, not insurgencies of just columns of troops fighting each other with tanks and guns. and mortar fires and trenches and stuff like you wouldn't suspect at the time. But this was a common occurrence in Ethiopia, and this is a wars fought with Ethiopia. There was one war fought in the 2000s between Ethiopia and Eritrea over the border conflict, and eventually uh, Ethiopia and Eritrea, though, uh, came to a peace deal around 2018, I think. Uh, yeah, that sounds about right. They came to a peace deal, and blowing my nose. But yeah, no, yeah, and what's his name? I think yeah, the president of Eritrea got a was it was it the president of Eritrea? Let me just think for a second. Nobel Peace Prize. I think it was.
Obama won a Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, he won the 2000. Okay, I'm laughing because you probably know. Okay, so the president of Eritrea won the 2019 Nobel Peace Prize for the quote unquote peace agreement between the two countries. And the podcast I was listening to about this, when they described this, they basically said like, this is the equivalent of like when President Bush called the Prime Minister of Israel, Sharon, a quote unquote man of peace, and then he was like joking like Sharon was like, oh come on, a man of peace, like what do I gotta do around here for you guys to recognize me? Like, I mean, look at these hands, they're bloody as hell. It's like it's
They don't
like
want to
giving
be
like
seen as men of peace. They want to be seen as men of war.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like it's like what does a guy gotta do around here to get some respect? It's a good fella shit.
Canna, what's that guy gotta do?
But yeah, no. The second you get a Nobel Peace Prize, you know right away that this person's going to be a genocidal lunatic.
Yeah, the Nobel Peace Prize. Very rarely do the people who win it actually ever caused any peace in their life.
Oh, and by the way, Israel actually like supported the 1960s Ethiopian government in a
Yeah.
petition
Oh yeah, they
against
were.
pan-Arabism.
Oh yeah, they were big time supporters of each other during the Cold War. And what's I gonna say? So and so one of the reasons why Eritrea and Ethiopia signed this peace agreement between each other is from what I could make out, they had a agreement to basically encircle and destroy Tigray. Because you got to remember, for Eritrea, so basically there's desert on their western border. There's desert on their eastern border. They got a coastline, so they don't got any border with anybody. The only real group that they got facing them, bordering them, is basically Tigray. And again, this gets very complicated because there's Tigrayan peoples in both Eritrea and Ethiopia, so you gotta like factor that in as well. Um, whether this is power play or whatever. The point of the matter is, when the war started off, both the Ethiopian and Eritrean governments went after the peoples of the Tigrayan regions, and they're kind of like trying to box in Tigray. One person described it as the equivalent of the Gaza Strip, with Israel and Egypt boxing in the Gaza Strip and not really allowing too much in. I guess it would be slightly better than the Gaza Strip in the sense that they do allow medical equipment in. But besides that, the people of Tigray are currently completely cut off from the rest of the world.
Yeah. I just saw something just recently right now that they had these, I think the UN and a few other orgs, they basically send in like over 500 trucks of food aid just within like maybe the last 6 months or so. Into Tigray they were barely allowed.
Yeah, and so one of the reasons why this war even kicked off in the first place, now that we've setting everything up, is so in the Constitution of Ethiopia, the it requires regional elections every few years, um, and with COVID, so this is 2020, so this is like right during the height of COVID and all that stuff. The Ethiopian government um, delayed elections and kept delaying them. So eventually, the Tigrayan regional state government, because you got to remember this is a federation and all, basically accused the federal government of not following the Constitution. So then they hold elections that are independent of what the federal government says. The federal government then says, you guys are violating the Constitution because we didn't authorize these elections. So eventually, that there's a dispute over, uh, the legalisms of it all. Eventually, the TDF, the Tigrayan Defense Force, comes into conflict with the central government of Ethiopia in November 2020, and eventually the war starts. And with the war starting, so you got the region of Tigray completely revolting against the central government, and you got so you got Ethiopia as a whole, like the entire Ethiopian federal government, versus the small state of Tigray. So Tigray is kind of like a boot. What's a good way to describe Tigray as its size? It looks like a boot um, on its toe. I guess that's the best way I can sum up Tigray. It looks like a boot on its toe upside down. And um, after the war started, it looked really bad for Tigray until things finally stabilized. with Eritrea and Ethiopia looking to like completely pincer and cut off and destroy Tigray. But they managed to hold out, and in fact, not only did they led a counteroffensive against the government, with other such forces fighting the central government, such as the Oromo Liberation Army, the OLA. So for every ethnic group, you're also going to find a liberation front slash resistance front for that group. There's other such groups fighting the government as well, like the peoples of the Somali regions of Ethiopia that want to separate and join into a greater Somali state. You got like other such peoples as well. And it's very complicated if you don't know all the ins and outs of what's going on here. And so basically, if we're going to get to the war itself, I've heard that the civilian death count is somewhere between 300 to 500,000 dead. And most of this has been due to famine conditions. Whether or not whether or not it's purposeful or whether or not it's deliberate or not, it seems to be very deliberate on the part of the federal government to starve out and kill as many civilians as possible. Because you got to keep in mind too, famine is one of the worst ways you can die. So a famine against a troublesome population is usually a good way to kill off that population as much as possible. And there's also been between 9,000 dead in terms of military killed in action. Along with that, like all wars, rape has been described as daily occurrence throughout Ethiopia, with girls as young as 8 years old who are raped, along with women as old as 72 who are raped. And there's been allegations of mutilation, rape, murder, mass graves as well apparently have been uncovered. That was actually one thing I wanted to get at too, is they've apparently been burning oh yes, the Ethiopian War. This is according to the BBC. Evidence of mass killings being burned, according to witnesses. So I'll just post that there. I could probably post this in chat. Yeah, this is one thing I wanted to get at. So, like all good wars and conflicts, so what do you do when you're trying to kill off a population, but you don't want the evidence as well. Well, um, the Ethiopian government learns that the only way you can get rid of the evidence is by burning it. They learned well from the British, who, whenever they would leave a colony, they would take all their papers to talk
them.
about, death tolls and other such things and statistics, and they took it all and threw it right
Well, for all those
into the fire.
American patriots that want to fucking do the treaty shit and think natives are gonna fall for that shit, those lying treaties that the U.S. did, that for some unknown reason why they've decided to keep hold of and haven't burned. Well, that's a British quality that they've kept intact.
Yeah. And you already did. You probably weren't here. I was just going over like death tolls. I was
I could
going
hear
over like
you.
math.
I was
Yeah, I was just
getting up and about. I was still in the same room.
yeah. But yeah, they're trying to burn all the evidence of mass killings and mass graves. Like all these wars. Like whenever you start like a war, right away it's always going to lead to like some level of you know these kind of war crimes that are going to happen and other such things. It's the inevitable part of war, but with this, it's descended into straight up genocide at this point, by any metric. Like 500,000 dead in like a year plus, maybe 2 years now almost. Um,
Jesus Christ.
exactly. Most famine, and there's been spillover into Sudan and Somalia and the other such regions as well with the Ormu people. And um, I mean, there has been quote unquote peace talks. About that, there has been peace talks, but for the most part, I don't see this ending anytime soon because I don't see like why would my question is basically why would the Ethiopian government end this when they hold all the cards basically, like and Eritrea as well. We can't forget their involvement in that, direct involvement, like because there's no pushback as well. Like that's another thing I wanted to get at too is this conflict has largely been ignored. Like I, especially in terms of like the English speaking world, like this video is probably like one of only like a handful even talking about this subject. It's basically not one of the this basically isn't I didn't make this video expecting it to get like 1 million views or something,
Release
or other
one more
such things.
video to the count of all the other people that are doing this, and more people need to be showing solidarity to places like Tigray. I don't know enough about the struggle, so a lot of this has been a learning journey for me myself. But this is where like people need to learn themselves forward and get things going on. And like I say, this is only the beginning. We need people from Tigray, Eritrea, Ethiopia to come out and speak about these things. It's Somalia as well. I mean, their struggle is entwined in this conflict at this point in time as well.
The Horn of Africa peoples in general need to come out for this as well. And
Yeah, but like, what's it? There's what's it? More relative struggles to different groups. I mean, all African struggles are gonna want to talk about the struggles of Africa, regardless of where it is. But you know, it's best to sort of like not overwhelm different groups with different things. Because if we're speaking with someone from Kenya, then a lot of the discussion is going to be centered around the struggle of Kenya. You know,
Definitely,
um,
definitely agree.
especially
And
the troubles China's been putting on Kenya.
oh yeah, God, don't get me started on that shit. But the so one interesting way that Tigray tried to get some um uh what's the word recognition of what is going on with the conflict in Tigray and Ethiopia is when International Holocaust Day, because I remember this. This was 2001. No, 2021. When International Holocaust Remembrance Day came up, um, all around Tigrayan Twitter, there was posts basically saying like, basically talking about how the Tigrayan peoples are a Semitic speaking peoples who are being currently genocided, and um, there was an appeal for like for help basically as Semitic speaking peoples, like using Holocaust Remembrance Day in order to get more traction, and
Yeah.
unfortunately it doesn't look like it really worked. In terms of like it becoming like a very widespread thing. I mean, like if there was as much deaths going on here as was in places like Ukraine, like you wouldn't even remotely hear enough about it, about what's going on in Ukraine. But because it's happening in um, uh, Tigray, uh, most people just don't have the time
Yeah,
nor day to care.
yeah. I mean, it's that's the problem in the first world, and sometimes even the second world. They just kind of focus a little bit too much on, the a lot of times it's Europe or American conflicts,
They're
direct
focusing
conflict.
they're they're focusing on Taiwan when literally not I can't even nobody has died there from what I can tell. And it's like from what I can
Mhm.
tell like
Fucking don't jinx yourself. Nancy Pelosi will finally have that stroke roll open. Crack addict.
Yeah,
from what
and
I can remember, genocide is probably the most important thing we should be focusing on, like the
Well, I
whole,
mean, here's the thing as
yeah,
well. Like everyone's arguing about the Han control over Taiwan. Taiwan isn't even originally Han, and even if it was, it's been a separate nation for God knows how long now. Anyway, and what the
1945.
PRC are gonna somehow
yeah,
be better jurisdictors over it when they have the one China policy. They could have chosen to integrate Taiwan more into China, and Taiwan was willing to, but they chose not to because they wanted a neo colony. Cheeky little shits.
yeah. And I was gonna
Same
add
with
to
Hong
that,
Kong.
yeah. And then now you got some of the people who are obsessing on the issue of Taiwan on the other side. Now you got them saying that we gotta support KMT and saying that Chiang Kai-shek didn't really slaughter indigenous people and other, so they like, it's right. It's just,
Yeah, fucking.
yeah,
That's fucked up. Like
it's
that.
crazy.
That's Haas
Yeah,
level ignorance of
yeah,
White
Native American
empires.
history, sort of shit.
yeah. And one of them is even like, I mean, one of them I saw is he calls himself a Taiwanese Chinese person, and but he's basically a Dengist, and he travels to America, and then there's another one too who, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of these Dengists who are doing the weird pro KMT crap, it's really just like,
Concerning.
wow, yeah. And right, yeah, like there's obviously a lot of there's a lot of conflicts, genocide being done in the third world, this one being Tigray,
The-
and
these guys support it, and I want to like, because we haven't like really brought him up too much, but you got people like fucking Caleb Maupin going out there
Oh,
simping
shit, the
for
fucking
Ethiopia,
Satanist himself.
the Satanist himself,
yeah,
king of productive forces, saying like, the Ethiopian government, they're just trying to increase the productive forces with Chinese help. Like,
yeah,
this is
Fighting against the cabal of wealthy bankers.
okay.
Cabal is an
jeez,
anti-Semitic slur term for those that don't know
he,
this
right,
shit.
he
and
even
and
got those fuckers at like the gray zone talking about the Ethiopian government. This is the they're trying to break away and form part of the multipolar world against
yeah, it's
Fucking, is this
uh,
like bipolar but the next stage up? Because I got bipolar. How do I get multipolar?
yeah, and like they'll be like, oh well, the Biden administration cut aid to Ethiopia for like a few months, and then they'll call it that a blockade, and then when they get the aid back for the Ethiopian government, then all of a sudden they don't even talk about it anymore. So it's just like a tactical opportunism with these people.
it
Um,
it reminds me a lot of Kazakhstan,
hmm
because
yeah,
originally when it first started, it was like a color revolution right away. It's like um,
yeah,
a citation needed on that one. Like, do you
yeah,
just say, is that like your knee jerk reaction to everything? Like, would
yeah.
would you have called the October Revolution a color
I
revolution
mean, at
right
the end of
away
the
or
day, for
something?
a color
Yeah,
revolution to be able to happen, the material conditions for an actual revolution need to be there. They can't just conjure revolutions up out of nowhere. The material conditions
yeah,
for an actual revolution need to be there for a color revolution to happen.
and yeah, and
And
I
they did
I,
this
I
with
try.
Kazakhstan, and in
Yeah,
Kazakhstan, the
yeah,
US was supportive of the government in power. It was a
and
worker
Israel as
revolution,
well.
and it was stomped by the fucking Russians.
Yeah,
Do these people not know about like Exxon Mobil's like investment in Kazakhstan, or
yeah,
all
Well,
the
no,
U.S. or
are
all
you
the U.S.
asking them to
bases?
empathize with the enemy? No, they're all big wealthy. I mean, cabal of bankers. Um,
yeah, and then Kazakhstan supports apartheid in Israel and gives them a lot of gas. And I mean, and then now they're making deals with the EU. Well, that's where the contradiction with the alliance with Russia is at. But yeah, it's like
what
I mean,
what
I have
what
a
what choice
problem
did
with
they
the
have?
mhm,
What choice did they have?
right, yeah,
well, they
and
had
all
to
the
do what they gotta
treaties.
do.
Yeah, oh, don't forget the treaties, guys. Of course, Putin has to go down there and crack down. He signed a treaty.
Nothing like
Oh,
the English way of fucking
right.
stealing people's land.
Yeah, and I really try to not use the term color revolution because it's gonna be weaponized against communists in the future. That's just the reality of it. I mean, you call it a counter revolution or something. I don't know. When it is, and of course, it's just over abused. It is.
What
Yeah.
fucking uh, what these people want, a colorless revolution. Uh, Shut up! I'm funny.
They want a white revolution. So I'm using it in
Hey.
it's a double entendre. So listen, hear me out. White is the color of royalty or reaction, because it's the House of Bourbon, and it's also the color of white nationalism. I did a funny.
Did a big fun.
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, these people they're so obsessed with, this kind of either it's the obsession with multipolarity or the Kautsky nonsense, or they're just too focused on first world problems when there's a lot going on in the third world and it needs to be addressed. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the revolutionary energy is 100% in the first world, and the amount of death and genocide that's going on. Because that's another thing as well with modern propaganda. A lot of this stuff isn't even being talked about. Like we're one of the few voices that actually will speak up about these kinds of issues. But like you'd probably go on like I don't know what it's like in the UK, but here in America, you'll be lucky if you even see a headline on page 12 of the newspaper, or
Yeah.
even like a snippet of a segment for even a minute about this subject. This is not a topic people are talking about at freaking all. You say Tigray, and they'll probably be like, "Did you just say tea? No, I don't want some tea."
Yep.
So besides that, only other thing I can say is we need solidarity to the people of Tigray and all the peoples of the the Neo-Ethiopian Empire that's never been dissolved, fighting for their liberation, like the Oromo people and the Somali peoples. And besides that, the only thing I could say is stop supporting genocidal governments like Eritrea and Ethiopia
Yeah.
being propped up by imperialists. Yeah, I don't know what more else to say other than that. I think we've covered pretty much it all.
That's a good way to end it. But I just parrot towards what's being said here. We need more people to speak out against this. We need people from the region who know what to talk about to speak out against this. We need more solidarity against genocides that are going on around the world. And
Absolutely.
like what's I thought I would just sort of brighten everyone's mood a bit in regards to long discussion we've had. I have another fire quote from Lenin. Firstly, the quote left communists end quote do not understand what kind of transition it is from capitalism to socialism that gives us the right and grounds to call our country the Socialist Republic of Soviets. Secondly, they reveal their petit bourgeois mentality precisely by not recognizing the petit bourgeois element as the principal enemy of socialism in our country. Thirdly, in making a bugbear of state capitalism, they betray their failure to understand that the Soviet state differs from the bourgeois state economically. The fun little Lenin getting angsty the petty bourgeoisie. Like there's loads of these. Like he just shoots off on one.
Spit and fire against the most reactionary class.
I mean, Lenin's pretty much on the ball with that. He's like, yeah, no, they're our biggest threat. The principal enemy of socialism.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to end on. Start with a Lenin quote, end with a Lenin quote.
Like a Lenin sandwich, but unfortunately the middle section is genocide. Not so much like Lenin sandwich anymore. It's more like um, there's Lenin bread around it, but there's a horrible consequence of despair in the center, and this despair is not going to change unless action is taken. It's all genocide, and in the first world, we've got to do what we can to destabilize the imperialists in our region and their dominance over nations like Ethiopia, and what's it, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Israel,
Palestine.
Palestine, those regions, because the imperialist influence is what helps these regional powers oppress these regional, they did their regional neighbors, how Israel can dominate Palestine so easily, how Saudi Arabia can dominate Yemen so easily, and well, same with Ethiopia's dominance over Eritrea and
The Horn of Africa in general.
yeah, and Tigray. Um, Solidarity to the third world, solidarity to the international proletariat, lumpen or not. Let the let the revolution
Red
of the third world
salute.
rise
Yeah,
as the
red
vanguard
salute.
of struggle develops. Red salute, comrades. Stay frosty. Stay uh, pray to the sun god. Do the ape. Whatever other stupid shit the mecha Satanists,
Oh
Stalinists
god.
do.
Now it's like K-pop stuff and they're
K-pop
calling
has edition. I want to hear Has here sing the
Me,
yeah.
kawaii music.
Well, he watches like a kid. He's telling his followers to watch a K-pop drama show. And he's like, yeah, they don't have sex or kiss, and he just goes like on a tangent about that and
What
how
the
it's cool.
fuck? Like, is that like his
Yeah.
preliminary before he watches Summer? Do they fucketh children? And it's like,
Well,
well, I'm
well,
pretty
he
sure everyone
yeah.
on the TV should not be doing that unless like he's been an avid watcher of Jim'll Fix It. Like,
Yeah,
fucking
it's
Haz is a Jimmy Savile enjoyer.
Jimmy's.
yeah, it was very just weird, and he's also, I told you guys about it. Where he's the Jordan Peterson of tankies, according to him. So,
Well, I mean, if anyone's the Jordan Peterson of wankies, I mean tankies,
Is
sorry, that would be
he's the weasel.
Caleb Maupin. I mean, even as the Kermit the Frog sounding ass voice, and like I took a screenshot today of a thing where it's like this geezer was talking about stuff that see, I'm already getting confused. That Jordan Peterson was going on about, and fucking Jordan Peterson was going on about how like the socialists just want to make everyone poor. I'm like, where have I fucking heard that before?
right,
Am I watching a video
yeah,
about Jordan Peterson or Caleb Maupin? Because Caleb Maupin thinks that that's what the real socialists want. They just want to make everyone poor. Which, no, we just want to make you poor, Caleb. Specifically you. Why are you getting so confused?
yeah, and
How
Haas is
else does
kind
he
of
think
like,
everyone else is going to get rich? He has to get poorer. We're gonna make him poorer, so everyone else
Specifically
can get
him.
richer.
yeah, and Haas is like
Capitalism was
going,
designed to oppress only Caleb Maupin because Caleb Maupin is he's like the man of the match.
yeah, and Haas has this like he's in like a political crisis because of Zizek's support of NATO, and so I guess maybe this like Jordan Peterson phrase that he used, you know, where I guess he's just like coping and now I don't know, embracing Peterson just to like shit on Zizek or something. Like the dude's very weird, honestly.
It, it
Haas, it's
it's
Oh
good to
well.
get your policies from being a contrarian.
But
yeah,
I will say what's it? Adios to the stream. Fucking red salute dickheads. We're off
Red
before we go
salute.
on another
Red
tangent.
salute.